You all, we are not licensed professionals. We are just here on this roller coaster called life, trying to be better friends to one another, trying to be better human beings on this planet. If you're tuning in, we are not opting out of therapy. We are not advocating that you listen to us and not see someone who is licensed and trained to help you with day-to-day life on how to cope and deal. So we advocate for therapy a lot here. We believe that everyone has something to talk to somebody about. So, just like to make that disclaimer that we're just here giving our opinions and having discussions week by week. And we're hoping that, maybe you can find something useful, or if at least find a little humor in this terrible, terrible rock we call the world.
In other words, if you listen to our advice and you get popped in the mouth, don't at us.
Yeah, don't at me because you may get popped in the mouth again. Welcome back to another episode of Friendship University. The podcast where we try to be a little less trash in hopes that it would encourage you to be a little less trash. Today, I am welcomed by myself and my beautiful co-host, me and I. This week, our wonderful, lovely, magnificent co-host Miki is not feeling so well. And so we're sending our prayers, lifting up positive vibes, all that jazz to make sure that he feels a little bit better. But we both want to make sure that you still got a dose of your Friendship Fridays. And so we decided to just do a solo podcast today. And by we, I mean I, me, myself, and I. So here I am. I am going to be bringing something that I feel is interesting. I don't know, but that my taste could sometimes be acquired. Anywho, first, I would like to say we hope you are getting better very soon, Miki. We know that you'll be up and running next week. We can't wait to hear what you have to say. We had a very juicy conversation waiting for you all this week, and we will pick that up next week. That's first. Secondly, we've been talking about some new, segments for the podcast. I can't wait to unveil those with you. We both have been brainstorming some great ideas, bouncing off of one another. One of those segments being pop culture. I'm still going to just touch on it this week just because it was kind of like, I don't know, weighing a little bit on the situations that have been happening with the young lady that was hit in the face with a brick. Our hearts and prayers go out to you as well. It's so much going on in the world. I can't even begin to describe, but the conversations that have just been ensuing around this whole situation with the black woman hit with a brick, and no black woman is protected by anybody, and just all of this. We just want you to know that our hearts and prayers go out to you. And to anybody who feels like anybody deserves to get hit in the head with a brick and be subjected to an immediate or partial or future death by that, because a brick to the head can kill you. Let's just be clear. We were celebrating and insinuating and just capitalizing on the Montgomery Brawl just a month ago. So let 2 + 2 always equal 4. Let's not say we're going to be for unity and stick together and then we're always going to have each other's back. And then we're going to say somebody deserves this and they're a troublemaker and all this. Nobody knew this person's background at the Montgomery Brawl. We were skyrocketing the sales of chairs. So let's just really put things into perspective here. That's all I wanted to say on that. Hearts and prayers to you, girl. We hope that you have a very good and speedy recovery. And regardless of what happened, whether people believe you deserved it or not, may it have been whatever it needed to be to work in your favor. for the future. That's my hope and my prayer for you. So, um, there's nobody from here for me to talk to say whose week is what or what week is what. So, I mean, my week was okay. What did I do? When did we record? Last Tuesday? What day is it? It's Wednesday. Labor Day passed. Didn't barbecue. Didn't get invited to a barbecue. Didn't see a barbecue on my timeline. I don't know what my generation's doing. I kind of feel slated because I don't know who the chef or the Q Masters is for the generation that I'm growing up in. I really just want somebody to cook for me. And even though I don't eat a lot of stuff that goes on the grill, I would still love to be able to come to a barbecue and bring my side salad or bring whatever side or bring some paper plates or bring some sodas or meat or whatever you need, and just for the camaraderie. So if you're listening to this and you like to barbecue, you're a Q aficionado, you just know how to throw down on the grill, don't be afraid to invite us because we will show up. I'm not saying I can't grill. I'm not saying that my friends can't grill. I'm saying I'm not going to grill. I do have friends that may grill, but we don't have access to a grill. And before you start talking about our apartment complexes have grills, remember COVID. I just want you to remember that people don't wash their hands. So we would love to have our own grills, but other than that, I just chilled, took down my hair. That was a 2-day process, taking those braids out, washing, detangling, doing another hairstyle. If you know, then you know. So that's how my last 7 days have been. Super chill, but busy, but chill. So this week, what I thought we could do was give you a nice little information session. Since this podcast is titled Friendship University, and we talk a lot about how to make friends, what the root of friendship is, and all those topics that involve creating and maintaining and developing friendships, and not just friendships, but relationships in general, I thought it would be cool to just take a deep dive into the history of friendship. So for all of my millennials out there, this is vital information for your everyday life.
And now, Roy Bennett with more vital information for your everyday life.
You may know that. That is from a popular sitcom from when I grew up. I was just very much so taken aback by learning how old she actually is in real life. Way older than I thought. It's so funny, our interpretations of what we think age is, because I thought she was young. I thought my teachers were old. I thought my professors were old. I just thought everybody in the world was old till I got older. And then it's like, you're actually not that old. All of my teachers are probably in their mid to late 20s and maybe early 30s. Thought you were 50. 60, girl, my bad. I'm so sorry. My apologies to you. Now I see how people view me, but it's fine. We're going to move forward. So we're going to take a brief trip down memory lane. I am a random fact aficionado. So I just love knowing random things. I don't know. Sometimes I come across them reading. Sometimes I come across them on the internet. It's whatever. But alongside with that, I am as well a natural researcher. So I love to learn. I love to grow. And anytime I learn something, I will dive into it as much as possible to try to get my own understanding of it and have a full scope of whatever it is that I'm being taught. So I did a deep dive of sorts into the history of friendships. And honestly, by deep dive, I mean kiddie pool, because I just found out earlier today that Mickey wasn't feeling so well. And so I had to take time in between my actual day job to do this research. And let me actually say, I did this on my lunch break, just in case anybody's listening from my job. I did this actually on my lunch break. And so I only had a very, very limited amount of time to do this by myself. So we've touched on the definition of friendship before, right? But I'm going to give you all of a reminder. So friendship is a noun, and there are kind of a few definitions to friendships, but I just pulled from various sources to get a culmination of maybe about 3. So, friendship can be a relationship between two or more individuals that has a state of enduring affection, esteem, or intimacy. It is also the emotions or conduct of friends, the state of being friends. It's a relationship between friends, plural noun, friendship, and then a state of mutual trust and support between allied nations. So, for me, the first thing that pointed out was I thought it was interesting that it said that it was a relationship between two or more people, because we oftentimes reference how we have friend groups, and you can also have friend groups. I mean, we have our mutually ambiguous friend that we always are referencing, but at the end of the day, we all have individual friendships with one another. There is no friendship if it's three of you and neither one of you have a connection. So you're just in the mix. So we all have our individual connections and mutual respect and trust and support for one another. So I thought that was cool. So what I'm going to start with is the prehistoric times. This is before Twitter, girl, Instagram, even before paper, because prehistoric generally means before any written documentation. So, we had the early humans were found to have bonds with one another for protection. They had to scavenge resources. They had to have a hunting and gathering situation. There were early friendships that were essentially there for survival in harsh environment. Essentially what that meant was that no one could make it on their own. You had to go out in groups and hunt. You had to have community when you were building your civilizations and different things like that, because you just couldn't do it on your own. I know we've all seen I don't remember what product that was, but the caveman commercial where he's like, I'm a caveman, and all that jazz. It is like, if you think about that, cavemen or women, because please don't come for me. Okay, men, it's just a general statement. Uh, they weren't alone, okay? And by they weren't alone, it wasn't just human beings out there in the wilderness building these civilizations. There were wild animals. There were things that could kill you. And so the best bet was for you to pair up, or in multiples of two or more, to go out, get the food, bring it back, scavenge, build, all these things. So this goes back to my original saying where people talk about, oh, I made it on my own and ain't nobody help me. That's a lie. People just be lying for no reason. You don't have to lie, Craig. You ain't got to lie. Like, you didn't make it on your own. There's no way you could make it on your own at all. There's absolutely no way in the world that there is someone who has risen to a peak of notable success by themselves. If I'm wrong, please tell me. Somebody, give me an example and we can discuss. So that was the prehistoric times, right? There's not a lot that I was able to research on it. I would have loved to be able to dive a little bit more into it. But like I said, I only had my lunch break, y'all, to do this because I got a full-time job and I was at that full-time job for 8 hours, minus my 1 hour lunch break. So I only had an hour to do as much research as possible over 3,000 plus years after we've been on this earth. So I just didn't have enough time to dive into what prehistoric had to offer. But I thought that was interesting that they noted that there were different fossils and things that they found to indicate that people stayed together when they would go out into certain places. So now we're moving more so into the Romans. A lot of people know the Roman Empire, all these things. We did this in study for history and all that jazz. But the Romans really took a similar thought to friendship as well, with some notable Roman statesmen exploring the idea that in the face of a true friend, a man sees it where a second self. So that word, his friend, is he, and he is his friend. Meaning, if his friend is rich, he is rich. If his friend's poor, he's poor. His friend is weak, I'm weak, etc., etc. And this was like second life almost. So Romans kind of took it as like they saw themselves. I don't want to use the term reincarnated, but it was almost like if I die and you live on, I will also live on because I was your friend and I am you and you are me type of situation, which I thought was very interesting. You have early signs of friendship showing up in this realm of literature as early as the 13th to 14th century with like notable Catholic priests and philosophers. I think his name is Ficino or Ficcionato. Please don't come for me if I'm mispronouncing it or I don't know the actual term. I only had my lunch break people to study this. So I think his name is Ficino, but he supposedly coined the term platonic love. So, for those of you who are not familiar with what platonic love is, that means love that is without the reciprocation of romantic endeavors. And that's just me saying this, what I remember off the top of my head, what platonic love is. But essentially, it's love without you having to feel like you have to be physically involved with somebody to show your love. So platonic love shows up in your family. It shows up with friends that you're not intimate with on a sexual level. It can show up in leadership. It can show up in a lot of ways. So he is known to have coined that term. And it first appeared in a letter that he wrote to a friend. There was a series of platonic love letters that he wrote to this friend. They were poems, they were prose, they were different things like that he just wanted to express himself to this person in gratitude of the relationship that they were able to build. I think it was something that they said he had never experienced before. So he was able to express himself via words to this individual. We also see it in such things as like Pride and Prejudice, which I believe came out in the 19th or 18th century. The actual book, not the movie. These are things, just a FYI, for some of these references I'm making, these are things that I remembered growing up or like having read and remembered when they came out. So these are references that I, in conjunction with a little bit of research, was able to like either verify or shortly verify if this is within the same time frame. So you had Pride and Prejudice, and for me, I was thinking about references such as Shakespeare's play Julius Caesar, which you have the like notable "et tu, Brute" saying, which is like the Latin sentence meaning "even you, Brutus." And so Caesar's like uttering these words as he's being stabbed to death, and he recognizes that he's being stabbed to death by his friend Brutus, among other assassins or whatever. So there are just all these notations of friendship and even friendship and betrayal. And I mean, which honestly, like, Brutus did what he thought was best because he thought Caesar was going to be a tyrant, and like he did what he thought was best for his dear country Rome. But that's neither here nor there. You see these like examples popping up in what would now be considered pop culture of examples of friendship. So then we kind of move into the philosopher realm. We've been talking about Rome, and we know that a lot of philosophers are there in that period. So I thought this was pretty interesting because there are a lot of philosophers that you can reference. At one point I thought I was going to be a philosopher. Jesus, thank you. Because that's not a life I actually don't want to live. But yeah, you have this notable philosopher, Aristotle, which if you haven't heard of him, you can look him up. A lot of people are familiar with Aristotle. He's a notable philosopher, like I said. And he references that for perfect friendship, you must get to know someone thoroughly and become intimate with them in the sense that you are you do things that are very difficult to do, like being completely honest, completely acceptant, completely selfless. These are things that he uses. These are adjectives that he uses to describe how you become a really good friend. And he broke down friendship into 3 types. So there was the friendship of utility. These friendships are based on what someone can do for you or what you can do for another person. It might be that you put in a good word for someone. This is in today's time. And they buy you a gift in return. This could be a barter system back in that day, right? Like, oh, this person may have been poor and they need meal or they need wheat or they need something that's going to get them to the next week. Oh, as their friend, I can go to someone who I know trusts me and I can say, hey, they're good to give it to you with their next crop. They're good to give it to you with their next offspring. They're good to give you for this. So that's being able to put a word in for somebody. For some of you, you need to reference this when you are giving references to your jobs for friends because you don't want people coming on a job and embarrassing you. But that's another story in there. That's not here nor there. Such relationships have little to do with character, which is crazy because why would you put a word in for someone and you can't trust their character? That don't make no sense. And can end as soon as possible, used for you or the other person is removed from the equation. So I think at the basis of it, there has been an expansion that has grown from the use of utility, right? It may be a little bit more expand, but not much. It sounds like what this means is I'm going to use you for what you have to give me now. I may or may not be able to give you something back, but if I can or cannot, I'll just get what I can get from you now. So you have those people who are opportunists. They say adjectives like that, like, oh, you meet people and they immediately ask you, what do you do for a living? Who are you? And all these different things. That can give off an indication that you're like meeting someone who may or may not be wanting to just figure out what you have to offer them before they even get to know who you are. Because like I said, it's pretty crazy to me for me to give my word to somebody else on someone that I don't know. But now that I'm thinking about it, they probably did that because they were going to get something out of it, right? Like I can reference you to a job because I'm going to get a stack if you get hired. And what you do with that ain't none of my business. If you get fired, as long as you make it 90 days, girl, guys, I'm going to get my money. I'm going to get my coin. Please don't ever reference someone y'all don't trust. Please, for the love of, you know. He also had the second level of friendship, which was the friendship of pleasure. These are friendships based on enjoyment of a shared activity or the pursuit of fleeting pleasures and emotions. This might be someone you go for drinks with, or join a particular hobby with, and is a common level of association among the young, Aristotle declared, which we've talked about before, how we have different dynamic groups of friendship here. And if you really break it down, as we've gotten older, if we talk about the friends that we only just go out and have fun with, we're not as close with them anymore. Like, or even I'll just speak for myself. I can't speak for Mickey, but I know for myself, if we were just going out, having a good time, it was like party, hardy, hardy, YOLO, you only live once, and blah, blah, blah. I'm at a stage of my life where that's not the altitude that I'm flying at. So we may not talk as much because I'm not going out as much. I'm not doing the same things that we were doing before. I'm not the same person. So I may hit you up when I want to have a good time, which may be once or twice a year. And then we don't talk anymore. And I may not even do that because I may now have friends who fit the mold for all of the aspects. So Aristotle noted that this type of relationship can begin and end just as quickly, depending upon the person's ever-changing likes or dislikes. So again, there could be someone who's just like, I like to do XYZ all the time. I will say I had an experience where I was friends, or I would say this is before we actually became friends. I was an associate of someone who I knew who liked to do what they call recreational drugs. And they used to like to go out and do it. And they became very, very close to other people. When they stopped doing it recreationally and they realized the other people weren't doing it recreationally, that it was actually a habit, that they were addicted, they didn't speak to them anymore. Their likes began to change. And so they had nothing else in common with this individual. So they no longer hung out with them anymore, which is fine. You have to do what's good for you. So if you are noticing that your likes and your dislikes are changing and your friend group has to change because of that, don't feel ashamed. Like, move on and find other people who now like what you like. He then has the third and final level of friendship, which is the friendship of virtue. These are the people you like for themselves, who typically influence you positively and push you to be a better person. This kind of relationship is based upon character of two self-sufficient equals, meaning both of you are in a place where you have character that you can see you're self-sufficient or you're trying to be, and there's mutual respect that happens. And this is also a lot more stable than the previous two categories. So for Aristotle, this final level of friendship of virtue, he alludes, is the highest level. While friendships of utility and pleasure have their place in your life, it is rare, yet pure friendships of virtue that are the greatest contributors to a good life. So he notes that you will come across people who will have what we call now seasons in your life, essentially. You'll have people you'll come across, whatever season you're in, they'll be there. But the friendships of virtue are the people who are there for a lifetime. They can withstand the test of time. They can uphold you. They can be there with you growing and going higher and higher with you as you go in life. So that was pretty interesting. I think that's, it's not my complete philosophy on life per se, but I can agree on certain points of those three levels. I think you will go through people who just have their place, their space, and their time in your life, and then eventually, or not even eventually, but you will soon come to realize who is like there. And that could even be some people who you thought were going to be there forever, but then they don't end up being there forever. So again, you just don't have to beat yourself up for that. You just have to take stock and take reverence in the people who you find are your friendships of virtue, essentially. So then we move to the Middle Ages, which is kind of like when you start getting, it's funny to say technology now because I feel like I've seen how far technology has come, but if you knew where it came from, it would be technologically advanced then. So you start to see like the rise of technology in senses in the Middle Ages, but really more so in the Middle Ages, they started talking about that there was a Christian theology that played a significant role in shaping the concept of friendship. So now friendship was often seen as a means to spiritual growth and moral development, and the concept of what would now be considered your quote unquote chosen family began to arise as individuals began cultivating friendships with like-minded people. So in the Middle Ages, you had the Renaissance. If this is something that you're interested in, you can Google it, the Renaissance. There are multiple, but you saw a revival of interest in classical ideas about friendship, and friendships among scholars, artists, and thinkers flourished during this period. And the concept of friendship continued to evolve. You had people who were now seeking people who thought just like them. So a lot of times when you think about philosophy, philosophers hung out with philosophers. Like nomads hung out with nomads, but it wasn't really spoken of that way. Everyone didn't hang out with who they thought had the same mindset as them. For a while, it was just a small group of people in prehistoric times up until this time that just kind of found what you, I guess, could now consider your tribe or your people who think like you and want to be like you. And so now you start to see the rise of people who are actually seeking out like, oh, you like this, I like this. You like that, I like that. And it's more of a meaningful I like this versus like a fleeting thing. Like maybe today I like to go to this town, but tomorrow I don't. It was more so like I actually I'm a little older and I realized that I like to do this. Or I like family and family's like really important to me. Oh, family's important to you? Like now we're starting to congregate and become closer and different things like that. So also during this, you started to evolve into the 20th century. So we're like one step closer to the 21st century. We're very close, you all. Uh, and then you started to have the advances in communication technology. So you don't just have literature, you don't just have like, there were black and white films during this time, there were some like hieroglyphics, there were things that existed that would have been considered technologically advanced during that time to accentuate feelings or emotions or whatever was going. But now we have what we know as technological advancements. So you had the telephone, you had the internet, which allowed people to maintain and cultivate friendships over long distances. Uh, I don't know about you all, but I had a pen pal. And I know several people who had pen pals. I had a pen pal for a really long time. There were chat rooms that started to happen. People, you were able to now meet individuals really quickly that were not in your direct vicinity. So this was the rise of like the chat rooms and the long distance phone calls. I don't know if any of our listeners, if you're old enough to remember how you used to get charged for long distance calls, then you good in my book. Yeah, but you used to be on your house phone, and if you made a call outside of your state, it was considered long distance and it was very expensive. I remember my siblings running up phone bills oftentimes. I remember one time my sister used my mom's car phone to like make several calls and the bill was like 600 or something dollars. And that was a lot for that time. Talking about like a phone bills. I don't know. I'm just throwing a number out there, but I feel like they were like 30 or 40 bucks a month. And that may be stretching it, maybe in like 15 or 20. But she had a 300 and something dollar month bill, and you know, my sister got put on punishment, and that was crazy. So you had the rise of that, which came with meeting people who truly wanted to be friends and also meeting people who didn't, unfortunately. But yeah, so you then had television and film that were also rising in this time frame. You had these mediums of entertainment that were now showcasing different levels and ethnic groups in friendship. Like shout out to Living Single, Different World, Waiting to Exhale, Moesha, the Parkers, all those people, like all these shows that were now showcasing the different dynamics. I mean, Girlfriends, all these things that were now coming out and showcasing what friendship like looked like over the course of the world. So not just where you were, but you could see like, oh, I don't live in New York. I'm nowhere near New York, but I can see what it's like for 4 or 5 friends to be growing up in a brownstone in New York and realize what it was like for them versus like uh Moesha who's growing up on the West Coast, and you could see what it was like growing up with friends on the West Coast over there. You could see grown women growing up and see like what it was like for them. Even, Friends came out and you could see what it was like for that ethnicity to like grow up together, in the sense of we think about growing up and we think about it from birth, but there's a period that happens where it's called coming of age, and they're like really coming of age together as they're growing up in the city and learning what their likes and dislikes are and who they are and what their friendships mean to one another, etc. So you really had this rise, which I think was pretty cool. I'm I'm personally thankful that I grew up in a generation that was able to see both sides of it. So I didn't necessarily grow up without television or any kind of like medium to be able to experience anything outside of written language. We definitely had TV and radio and all of that jazz. But even just the internet and seeing the rise of that, like I thought the execution of the television growth was crazy. So I can remember growing up with what they call, I think they were floor models, and they just sat on the floor. They were super heavy. You couldn't move them. When they were in a room, they were just there for the rest of your life. And even seeing that go from the big screen, if anybody remembers Martin in that episode where he's like the Mega 3000 or something, he goes by as that TV and Gina goes off. From that to the flat screen now, and then even the computer, seeing that from like the big back, and just like seeing now we have laptops that are portable, we can just throw in our backpacks. This is very interesting. I'm very grateful that I was able to like see it from the other side come to fruition here. So we're in the 21st century, and now you have like psychologists and sociologists. They begin to study friendship a little bit more systematically. They're looking at friendship, and by they I mean like researchers like George Hubert, Eric Erickson, Robert Cortell. They explored the development and psychological aspects of friendship and how this contributes throughout the change of your life and how it contributes to the longevity of your life. So they're trying to understand how friendships form and change over time through people. And they've been able to do some pretty good finds. I don't have a lot of it on that because, again, I only had my lunch break to look this up. So, I'm doing the best that I can. We'll probably do a part 2 of this when Miggy gets back. But, they've been looking at how friendships form and change. And I think some of it does go back to the earlier days of philosophical findings, and like we're looking at now. Honestly, those pillars that formed in the beginning didn't change. The human being can't go on without another human being. Like, we're not built to not interact and have communication and have relationship with one another. So that's the starting point. And then the way those relationships cultivate have long formulated and been studied, and now we're seeing the rise of how human beings interact and what friendship means and what relationship means in general. So I would say today friendship remains a vital aspect of human life. It offers emotional support, companionship, because let's be honest, everyone doesn't desire to be in romantic relationship. There are some people who I feel like have been graced to not want to get married, to not want to have children, to not want to do those things. That is the grace over their life. And so they find companionship in other ways, one of those being friendship. I think one of those main ways being friendship. And a sense of belonging. We're always looking for a sense of community. Everybody wants to be understood. I mean, this is why there's so much spewing, so much combativeness that happens on the internet, because everybody wants to be heard and just understood. And if I say something and then you respond to it a way that I don't feel like you understood what I said, I'm going to respond to it again. And then if you respond to it again, then I don't feel like I'm understood. I'm going to respond possibly in a more negative way. And it's just a back and forth tit for tat. So we all desire community, which essentially is a self of belonging, a self of being feeling like you've been understood and that people know what you mean and who you are. And then what I will say is psychologists have now found that friendship continues to adapt to the changing dynamics of society, technology, and culture, which I found pretty interesting because, again, you saw the rise of like the ability to talk to people who were not in your realm, who weren't in your direct vicinity. I think I've touched on this before. I'm pretty sure I have, but there's a such thing as friendship by proximity. And a lot of us, our first friends that we had were friends of proximity. For most of us, honestly. But that's because they were in your initial reach. They were in your communities. They were in your neighborhoods. They went to the same school. You had similar experiences. And then if you ever left that proximity, you could see that friendship disseminate over time because you were no longer experiencing the same things. And so what the internet did was give the ability for you to be able to communicate and build foundation of trust, the foundations of friendships, as we went over, trust, understanding, mutual respect, those types of things with individuals who weren't necessarily within your direct reach. Whether it was real or not, that's up to the individuals, but you were able to start doing that. So, technology and culture, and then reflecting the evolving needs and values of individuals and communities. So, I think that draws back to the initial course of friendship, right? They said that in prehistoric time, there were findings that said people made connections and became friends because they needed to be able to depend on one another. They needed to be able to go out and hunt. They needed to be able to have security, to have bonds with someone that they can trust while they were out in the wilderness. And so that's just the same kind of what's happening now, depending upon how our communities evolve, how we evolve as a human race will depend upon what these friendships look like, I guess, within the next 1,000 or so years. We're actually, gosh, I think about it. So we're in 2023. Us listening to this will not be around when 3,000 comes around, if it comes around. But I would be interested to see even what these findings look like in the next 30 or 40 years, when we have the newer generation that has now grown up and become adults, and we've seen how far technology has come from where it is now, because I know it's hard to believe, but technology will advance even more than where it is now. You can mark my words on that, because people didn't think it could go any further than where it was. Our parents didn't think it could go any further than where it was, and look at us now. So I would be very interested to see what this looks like in the coming years as far as our generation and the generations that come after us are concerned. So that was a brief history of friendship. I say brief because you could go deeper and deeper and deeper into it. But this is what I was able to gather as information for you all to just get a better understanding of why friendship exists and why it's just a lifelong standing thing. It's not going anywhere, people. So learn to make friends. Learn to be nice. He who has friends has first shown himself friendly. So, don't be trying to say you can get anywhere on your own. You can't. It's just not possible. Go make some friends. Be open. Get out the house. Or, as they said for the 20th century, get on the internet. I don't know. But make you some friends, okay? We're here. We're just trying to encourage you to make connection and build relationships. So, this is the Friendship University podcast, and we hope that this information was helpful to you and that you enjoyed it. You can find us on socials. We have the same for majority of them. Our Twitter, our Instagram, and our TikTok are all at Funny Podcast. That's FUNIPODCAST. And then we have our Gmail, which is the Friendship University Podcast at gmail.com. You can email us any topics that you want to discuss, any questions that you have, any friendship shout outs. We're looking to build new segments, you guys. So whatever it is that you're looking for us to discuss, we're open to it. Just send us the information and we will get back to you. So thanks for tuning in. And again, this is vital information for your everyday life. And we will have Mickey next week back with us for another hot topic. So have a good week. Peace.